All right, that puts the Jets up now. Jets started with your guy in round one, Sam. Oh, by the way, we should also highlight the Patriots and Jets did execute a trade together. That was, I think it was the trade that the New England Patriots used to trade up to go get a kicker. The Patriots and Jets talked and traded with each other.
I wonder if they told him it was for a kicker, in which case the Jets are like, oh,
have
at
sure.
it.
Can you throw in Belichick just to go full circle here? Will McDonald, first round, the edge out of Iowa State, goes pick 15. Joe Pittman, the center out of Wisconsin, in round 2. Didn't have a third-round pick, but the Jets go in round 4. Carter Warren, the tackle out of Pittsburgh, and then his teammate, Izzy Abenaconda, the running back, also out of Pittsburgh. Some athleticism with Zaire Barnes out of Penn State. Jarek Bernard-Converse, the cornerback out of LSU, and the super athletic tight end, Zach Kuntz, in the 7th round. Nice little flyer there. What are your initial thoughts on the Jets draft here? Of course, they started with pick 13, but last week, they flipped it to pick 15 here with the Aaron Rodgers trade.
Yeah. So obviously Rodgers comes in, and one of the big questions is, what do the Jets do to make Aaron Rodgers happy? The Packers seem to steadfastly avoid doing that in the last few drafts, and the Jets didn't really do it either. They didn't add, certainly, receiving weapons for him. Now, look, the Jets have some receiving weapons. It's not like it was a glaring need or anything, but I'm still interested that they didn't go out of their way to sort of add a high impact pass catching weapon for Aaron Rodgers. And instead, maybe they wanted Broderick Jones, and then when Pittsburgh jumped them and grabbed him, they pivoted to Will McDonald. Either way, that's the guy they end up getting. A lot of people saw that as a reach, and by the consensus board, it was, which is the thing that's been shown to have the kind of predictive or the important part of it. I think he's a better player than that. I mean, he was my number 2 edge rusher in this draft.
So look at the consensus board, unless your rankings are different.
I'm not saying don't go with the consensus board. Consensus board had him at 33rd, so fringe first round pick, ends up going in the middle of the first round. I just think he's better than that. Maybe I'm wrong, but if that's what the Jets are looking at, I think he's maybe the most talented pass rusher in this entire draft. And when you consider what he was doing with those kind of 4-eye alignments, just inside shade of the tackle in that Iowa State defense, and he was still able to put up impressive pass rushing production. What was that quote that Robert Saleh had? We're going to move you away from the 4-eye and make you a 9.
Yes.
That's exactly it. They're going to take him from this inside shade over an offensive tackle, and they're going to move him out into space, and they're going to say, go nuts. Like everyone was saying, you saw all the time in mock drafts, like Robert Saleh gets his Nick Bosa, and it was always like Tyree Wilson or whatever. Okay, Will McDonald isn't the Nick Bosa either, stylistically. But the point being, Robert Saleh wants a guy that can pin his ears back, go get the quarterback, and Will McDonald can do that maybe better than anybody else in this draft class. So maybe it was a reach. I still love the fit. I still think Will McDonald going to Robert Saleh's defense is an incredible matchup, and I love that.
Yeah, Joe Douglas did state they trusted their board and the whole thing. I think the interesting thing here is at 13, the same thing we said about New England, at 13, would the Jets have gone with the last tackle on the board, Broderick Jones? Would he have been their guy? We mocked a tackle to them quite a bit. That's the only thing for fan bases coming out of the draft. When you don't fill what seems to be a direct need, it's a little uncomfortable. But I'll always push back and say, if they have to pick up a cut player or a waiver wire player, there are still starters that will be out there between now and September 1st. There will be starters if you really need to get somebody. But the tackle questions of Mekhi Becton never being on the field, Dwayne Brown being old, your 2 potential left tackles, Max Mitchell, your starting right tackle, struggled a little bit as a rookie, but you would have rather upgrade that spot at some point if you can. As far as the fit for the Jets, I completely agree, right? The athleticism and the burst off the edge for Will McDonald, you covered it well. And then Saleh's defense, it's not about having a Bosa or having a one player. They want to have 8 players, right? So if Carl Lawson's still on this team, I'm assuming he is. I just know you could cut him at any time, just like Corey Davis. But Will McDonald, Carl Lawson, Jermaine Johnson last year, John Franklin Myers, Bryce Huff. Those are 5 edges who can get after it, not even including Quinnen Williams on the interior, Quentin Jefferson, who they bring in. So they're much better on the edge than D-tackle, other than Quinnen Williams. But there's some depth there for the Jets. There's also this kind of 1 or 2 year implication that they're going to be winning more games. So I've seen that comparison to, hey, Peyton Manning had his Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis off of the edge.
Yeah.
Where if you're up 2 scores,
You want an edge rush.
you want a guy like a Will McDonald, coming off the edge who can get after the quarterback. So that part is all interesting for the Jets. I'm fine. I'm fine with this pick because I think when you're projecting pure pass rushers in this draft, McDonald was right up there with Will Anderson and whoever else. I think he's potentially a better pass rusher than Tyree Wilson and some of the other guys.
Oh, I think he absolutely is a better pass rusher than
And will be. We'll see. But I'm fine with that for the Jets. Tippmann, you get a starting center in the second round. I think the teams that got their second round centers, I think are going to be happy. Tippmann's a good, solid player. Carter Warren's interesting. He is a developmental tackle prospect. The production is poor historically, so developmental is, I think, what he has to be. And Abanikanda, the running back out of Pittsburgh, you already have Breece Hall as a home run hitter. There's another one, right? So there's even more big playability added to this offense.
There's also still a world where Elijah Vera-Tucker plays tackle for them. I mean, he's been moved all over that offensive line with injuries, and I think he's shown that he could play tackle and be okay. So, Tippmann coming in, basically adding any interior offensive lineman gives them the flexibility to potentially kick Vera-Tucker back out to tackle and use him there if that's where they think like the best combination of 5 offensive linemen is. So sure, there'll be guys available. They could potentially add a tackle in free agency or before the draft or before the season rather. However, there's also a situation where they go, okay, let's juggle the interior a little bit and we'll move Vera-Tucker out and he's our right tackle for the moment.
Yeah, so at least there is some O-line flexibility there.
Yeah.
General theme of the draft too. I thought most teams drafted pretty well. I don't know if that's how I always feel coming out of the draft. There was a statement from a Browns exec last year that the league's getting better at this generally, not like picking overall the right players where they're supposed to be picked. It felt like that for most of this draft, that most teams were picking good players overall. Not a ton of crazy reaches and that type of stuff.
That's the thing. I feel like when you see all these draft rooms, and in almost every case now, there's somebody on the analytics side in the room, and it's like, hey, look, here's this guy that nobody's ever heard of, but is like, the math nerds know him, because he's their analytics guy. I feel like those guys are having input now, and there are so few teams at this point that are just completely off on their own. It's like, no, we are 4 scouting guys in a back room making our own board up, and we're just drafting according to that. And I don't care what's happening around the league. I don't care how everybody else ranks these players. Like, they operate in a vacuum, and that's it. I think everybody now is getting much better at understanding the relationship with evaluations to the consensus board, to player position value. Even, we've talked to some guys where position value, I think, still has a way to go. But I think the idea that teams are getting better at this is probably true. The analytics, the data approach, just understanding how all this stuff folds together is getting better. Like it's like the 4th down decisions. The leaps we've made just over the last decade and that stuff has been insane. Like, decisions are being made now where it would be ridiculed 10 years ago, but it's not now because we understand, and everybody's getting to that point. Everybody outside of most announcing booths, that is. Obviously, they just go, the analytics says go for it. Who knows? But this is the draft now. Like, it's not the days of Al Davis just like sitting in a room going, give me the guy with the 4.27 speed and to hell with everything else, are kind of gone.
So our grade here at PFF, B- for the Jets. I think part of that will be most people saw the bit of a reach on Will McDonald. I agree on your point, though. I mean, I think the fit and everything. I don't really care that much about picking anybody between 15 and 40, really. Not that they're all interchangeable, but I don't think Will McDonald at 15 is egregious, but I get it as far as it is higher than expectation. We'll see what happens on day 3, too, with the Jets. I think Abanikanda has a chance. Zach Kuntz, maybe in a couple of years, we're like, hey, there's the athleticism. Take that shot.
Zach Kuntz's athletic profile is really just ridiculous. Like, you look at the percentiles, and he has 2 percentiles, I think, that are not in the 90th and above. And they are for weight, right? and he's 257 pounds.
Yeah.
So like weight is one of his problematic statistics, and that's him at 257 pounds. That's the 78th percentile. And then the bench press, where he only repped out 23 times at 225, which again is the 80th percentile. Everything else is 90th or above. In fact, it's 93rd and above. 99th height. He's 6'8". But vertical jump, 40 inches, 98th percentile. Broad jump, 10'8", 97th percentile. Three cone was 94th. 20-yard shuttle, 95th percentile. The 40-yard dash, 4.55, 93rd percentile. The 10-yard split was 93rd percentile. I mean, this is the Trayvon Walker of tight ends. And actually, ironically, similar problems in terms of like the on-field stuff wasn't there. But this is maybe arguably the greatest physical profile a tight end has ever stepped into the league with.
It really is. And because of that, I'm surprised that he lasted as long as he did.
To the seventh round.
Yeah, I thought he would go higher. I mean, he's absolutely huge. The combine's insane. He doesn't always win at the catch point for a guy that's a monster. It doesn't always look all that fast.
Yeah.
Or change of direction doesn't look special on the field, but he's still kind of a young football player. Snaps wise, like absolutely take that shot if you're the Jets.
I mean, the seventh round, like absolutely. Like if you were told that you could get arguably the greatest athletic profile to ever play at that position,
particularly
in the seventh
a tight
round,
end,
like
yeah.
I wouldn't like that's the kind of position where like I wouldn't even care if he played football before. If you just gave me that athlete and said he's a designated tight end, right? He ran a couple of routes training one day. Cool, I'm in. That's it. I don't need to see anything else.
So there you go. Jets, B-. You probably would have been a little bit higher on the Jets because you love Will McDonald.
Yeah, look, I mean, the reach element of it has to be, I think you have to bear that in mind. Like, there is not a good track record when people reach relative to the overall board. Now, it's not an egregious reach. Like, it's borderline first round to the middle of the first round. It's not like they took a guy who was a consensus third-round pick and they drafted him in the middle of the first. So, but you do have to at least acknowledge that the consensus board has that guy, 15 picks lower or whatever. But I do think there are reasons why he's a better player than the consensus has him ranked.
We also don't know exactly what they could have done, but if they could have traded down 7 or 8 spots and still gotten him, like, right, there is this hypothetical world where it could have been more efficient, more effective.
And it's a little bit of a worry anytime you're like, it looks like they might have wanted player X, but then player X got taken and they did something weird at the end of that. Like, just anytime you pair what is a sort of unusual move, relative to convention, like reaching 15 or 16 picks or whatever for a guy, with something happened just before that might have upset their plans. That's when it starts to look a little bit, panicky. But as I say, I really like the fit, at which point I'm a little bit more predisposed to explaining away the reach.